Okay, this is going to be, I don't know if I'm going to post this on YouTube, TikTok, whatever, but my son, RJ, sent me a video today. Young, well, I don't suppose he was that young of an African American man, talking about he's tired of paying bills. He's tired of basically working for someone else, on and on. The problem with the video that I had was there was no answer to it. I mean, he had no solutions. I could hear the frustration in his voice. I share the frustration. I don't know the immediate answer. I don't have any magic formula to tell anybody here. But what I'm going to try to talk about are some of the options that we have as U.S. citizens, for what that's worth these days. Um, uh, but he was tired of paying bills. He's tired of having to pay to live. Do the Eagles have to do that? He said. The Bible has a section where Jesus talks about the sparrows and how the Lord takes care of the sparrows, and they neither toil nor sow, and yet all their needs are met. So there's an aspect of utopianism there in the scripture. Not gonna lie, it's very becoming. I just got back from Belize, from Key Caulker, and it was really something to sit there and watch the creatures and how they are provided for by nature. The birds eat fallen coconuts. The birds eat, of course, worms or whatever they can find. Their birds are largely scavengers. Certain seabirds, they get lots of fish out of the ocean. Depending on their size, will determine how big of a fish they go after. The fish that are in there, the sharks, the stingrays, uh, the whatever, they eat the larger fish, and so on and so forth, and everything is provided. The key, and this is what really gets the average United States citizen, is that the key is that um, those critters don't eat more than they need. And that kind of gets the average quote unquote American, forgetting, of course, Mexico and Canada and the entire Central and South America are all Americans as well. But of the U.S. citizenry, we say, oh, yeah, you just want the government to limit what we have so we can all be poor together. Since when is poverty defined by eating so much that we're that we become fat? Those very same people would criticize me for being overweight, even though I've lost something like 70 pounds in the past, 20 years. But I'm still fat. So therein lies the rub. Anyway, let's get back to the solutions here. This young man says that he would live in a hut. Definitely that possibility exists. He could move somewhere like Jamaica or Belize or pretty much anywhere in the Caribbean. Find a small town in Mexico. Um, Basically, find a very inexpensive place to live, a room or an efficiency type apartment, not an American style. You might end up with a shared bathroom. Your shower might be outside. I don't know. There's all kinds of. Um, some people would say they would clean up in the ocean. Of course, I would encourage them to use natural soaps, biodegradable soaps, and all that so as to not to destroy the environment. Because Lord knows the regular crap that we've been washing our bodies with for the last 70, 80 years are detrimental to our environment and to nature. Um, so he could move to some place where you don't need heat or air conditioning because the temperature is nice and moderate year round. Perhaps not on a beach, perhaps in a mountain, on a mountaintop, although it does get pretty cold in the winters there on the mountaintop. But uh, you do your research, you can find that. And then, as far as provided you don't have any debt that follows you there, Your possibility is to just find a place to work, cook, wash dishes, bartend, find manual labor to do. And you don't have to work 40 hours a week. I mean, a lot of times in places like that, if you're talking no car, no no utilities, no house payments, just a simple rent payment to somebody, um, $100 or $200 a month, you can make $500 or $600 a month and live comfortably there. You won't be able to buy a bunch of new shit like PlayStations or or even a fancy phone. But many of those countries, you can go and you can buy phones for very little money. I mean, you can get, even here in the U.S., pay-as-you-go phones. You won't have all the bells and whistles, but you can at least have phone service and basic internet. You can get that for about 50, $60 a month or cheaper. Some places in like South America and stuff, and in Asia, you might get it as cheap as $20, $25 a month. And that's no lie. That's with the price of the phone. The phone might be a couple hundred. So you need to go there with a little money ahead. So what you do is you try to save. Maybe you don't pay your bills while you're here, and then you get the hell out of Dodge and you go. And you will need a passport to leave because the assumption is you're coming back. And you do want to maybe come back someday, especially to see family and all that. But so that's one possibility. There are places in the world you can go and live so extremely cheaply. Of course, you go to some places and it's going to be very hot in the summertime. And if you don't have air conditioning, but if you're living, on the like when we were in Key Caulker, my wife and I it was like 80 some degrees, and we would be just, oh man, it's so hot. And we'd get down to the beach, down to the waterfront, and we would sit there, and that beautiful breeze coming in just cooled us right off. So there's ways around all that. Now, that is I'm going to uproot everything, I'm getting the hell out of Dodge kind of a thing. That means leaving behind your car, but not for someone else to pay for, if you know what I mean. And it means leaving that hope for becoming a multimillionaire behind. It really does. You're not going to go to another country and live in a hut and hustle to become rich. And you're not going to become rich just by hustling. I'm sorry. Richness, these guys, the 1%, get rich by exploiting labor. That's the only way to do it other than inheritance. And any of my kids that might be listening to this, you aren't getting an inheritance from me. Unless I happen to win the lottery, and then, of course, Uncle Sam will take his cut, and we'll see where the rest of it goes. Certainly, if you're going to stay in the U.S., self-employment offers a good opportunity. But again, certain things dealing with self-employment are require a lot of capital. It's just not here in the U.S. It's really difficult, even just to start a little place of business, like a food truck type of a thing, or a food cart. You still need to get licensed and health department certified and all those kind of things. And those things cost money. They can be done, but I doubt you'll ever sell enough burritos or tacos or hot dogs or sandwiches or whatever it is you're selling off your food cart or food truck to become a multimillionaire or a billionaire. You're going to basically sell enough, if you're lucky, if you have a good product and you offer it at a good price and you don't exploit labor and you work hard, you're the one working, you may be able to put together a decent living. My very best friend, I love him dearly, he opened a business, and unfortunately he opened it just as COVID hit, and it failed, not because he wasn't working hard enough, and not because he didn't have an amazing product and wasn't amazing. He's an amazing person, and the business failed because businesses fail, and they do. They really do. So hustle all you want. About the only business you can find some illegal things going on. As that other video, the video that prompted this one, has stated. I've gone over 10 minutes, so it looks like I'm going to be putting this on YouTube. But anyway, so that's another alternative. The third alternative, truly, is to and as part of the second alternative, you could try skilled trades, electricians, HVAC, machinists, plumbers. They can still get, or join a union, Teamsters, UPS, UAW. Those guys are now making in the $40 an hour range. But honestly, $40 an hour ain't shit anymore, really. If you're talking like where we live here, an average home, a 3-bedroom home, is $300,000. Yeah, guess what? You're going to need $40 an hour to pay the bills. You can do it, and you can live comfortably. But if you have a bunch of kids, you got to worry about their health and their schooling and all that kind of stuff, and it'll get you. The third thing now, the system. The system. We live in what is euphemistically called a capitalist system. We talk about democracy. We do not have a democracy. We do not even have a republic. Because if we look at every other, first of all, democracy is the Greek word for people rule, and republic is the Latin word for people rule, or people are the king. So don't give me that shit that there's a big difference. Democracy tends to be, in our thought patterns, one man, one vote. Republicanism tends to be the people, one vote. But that means nothing. It is all still the people rule. In a capitalist society, people do not rule. It is impossible to have, in a capitalist-driven society, it is impossible to have democracy or republicanism. So all of that shit right out the window. I'm sorry. The people who rule in a capitalist society are the capitalists, the oligarchs, the 1%, the bourgeoisie, whatever you want to call them. They're all the same. At one time, the working men and women of America included small business people. My dad, but he owned a Dairy Queen and he owned a grocery store. Guess who opened those businesses and worked in those businesses all day, every day? My dad did. My dad, when he ran the grocery store, it was him and my brother Clay, basically. And they worked their butts off. And he never got rich. Never got rich. He was never poor, but he never got rich. And then he owned a Dairy Queen, and me and my sister Bev worked there pretty much. I only worked there the last few years. They sold it when I was 15. That was 50 years ago. My dad made a good living, but he was there from morning until night. He didn't get to go out on a yacht. He didn't go out golfing. He didn't do any of that stuff. He was there working elbow to elbow. He opened the doors and he locked the doors. And that kind of businessman is rare in today's United States, in today's capitalist society. We now have corporate executives who just sit on their ass and they pretend like they use their brain, but they use their other brain, the one that holds all the shit, until they evacuate it. But we just honor those guys, boy. We just think they're something, man. We have people who defend people like Elon Musk and Donald Trump and, Jeff Bezos. And then we have other people who honor politicians like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and Chris Christie and Donald Trump. I mean, what kind of mentality do we have to honor this system? And then, of course, we condemn all the people who are homeless, because all we ever see of the homeless people are those guys on the street high on drugs. Has anyone ever thought that maybe they're high on drugs because they're hopeless? They're not hopeless because they're high on drugs. But when they lost everything, they lost their jobs, they lost their homes, or wherever they were living, apartments, whatever. They lost their car, they lost their health insurance, they lost everything. And then someone offered them some crack, someone offered them some heroin, meth, whatever, and now they're stoned. I was a counselor, substance abuse counselor, and guess what? There's still a chicken and egg argument here. Which came first, the addiction or the hopelessness? And I tend to think that most of those people are stoned that are broken because the system has broken them. As far as paying bills, do you know that when you pay, we pay what we call public utilities, but they're not public utilities. Our electric company in this area is owned by a private corporation. Yes, they have to ask government for their price increases. Oh, how horrible. And that government, that bourgeoisie democracy, which isn't a republic or a democracy, they go, yeah, we see how hard it is for you to make ends meet, oh, consumer energy or DTE energy. And they allow them to raise prices. If we had a true public utility, they would only be charging the people what it costs to produce the energy that is used. And the people would only be paying for the energy that they use. And if there is a surplus, that surplus is returned to the consumer, not to the shareholder. That is the problem with that system. We have food systems where, when I was young, where farmers would bring in all their corn and all their potatoes and all of their wheat, whatever, beans, we had a lot of beans, sugar beets. They would bring them in, and they would be a price negotiated by the cooperative. And that cooperative would nail a price with the rich guys and say, this is what we'll sell our corn for or our potatoes for. And then each farmer, if you brought 100 bushels in, whatever it was, like $10 a bushel, they would get $10 for those 100, so they'd get $1,000 for those 100 bushels or whatever it might be. The guy brings in only 50 bushels, would get $500, and so on and so forth. But the farmers would be in a cooperative rather than competing for the lowest price. They would cooperate to get the best price that would then give them a good living. I never knew a poor farmer growing up. I never did. And I knew lots of them. And they were not poor. They were not super wealthy. They were not in the 1%. They worked their tails off, except in the winter. Many of them traveled south. And that's okay, because they worked their farms. And the cooperatives made sure they made enough money. So, what am I talking about? True public utilities, cooperatives in farming, rather than big corporations, and the middlemen who have not produced one single frickin' potato or cob of corn or bushel of wheat. Why are they making money? Oh, well, they're hooking up with the markets. No, they're not. To hell with that. That cooperative can sell directly to the markets. There's no reason that they can't sell directly to a market that then processes it in one way, shape, or another, and they put it to a store, to a farmer's market. That's the other thing. A farmer can bring his stuff to a farmer's market and sell it and get the best price he can from the local consumer. He or she can. My feminist friends can ignore my pronouns. I'll say they then. They, them, whatever. My point is that cooperatives, and public, those are the true nature of a republic and a democracy, where the people rule, not the corporations, not the bourgeoisie, not the middlemen, not the commodity brokers, not the Wall Street tycoons, but the working people, the working class. That's called, whether you like it or not, Whether you've listened to the bullshit on Fox News and MSNBC and all that other crap, that is what socialism is. A people-centered economy. Ho Chi Minh said that socialism is when a society enhances the material and spiritual well-being of its citizens, especially its workers. But capitalism only enhances the material conditions of the bourgeoisie. You will never, ever, ever earn enough money by hustling if you stay in this society and or country. There are a lot of poor countries. Capitalism is everywhere. I'm not saying you're going to escape it. But you can find places in the world where you can live in a hut. You might have to go swimming every day to cool down because it's going to be hotter than hell in whatever their summer is, because Southern Hemisphere summer is in our winter months. But around the equator, Belize, southern Mexico, Ecuador, Brazil, it's pretty much warm year-round. It's beautiful. But anyway, those are the three options, the way I see it. There may be more. I don't know everything. And I know a lot of people, they misunderstand what communism is, they misunderstand what socialism is, and they sure misunderstand what capitalism is. Because if they think that capitalism is a good system, now don't get me wrong, what we have in the United States today is what's called neoliberal finance capitalism. And finance, insurance, and real estate, they thrive on debt. That's where they make their money. We produce, that part of the economy produces nothing except debt. And debt is what's killing us. I've got credit cards. I was out of debt at one point in time. But because I'm trying to get free from all of this shit, my wife and I have gone into a little bit of debt. We've borrowed money to help our kids out. And that's all coming back kind of to bite us in the ass. But we're going to get out of this. But the reality is, you have got to make a decision. But I will guarantee you, if you're under the age of 30 right now, there's nothing for you here in the United States. You can hustle all you want. You can even become a skilled professional. And if you're under the age of 30, it's just a matter of time. And if you manage to make it somehow, your kids won't. I'll guarantee it. I'll be dead by the time your kids get old enough where you say, wow, that old fucker was right. I'll be gone, long gone, so I won't be able to say I told you so, but I'll tell you so. I'm telling you. It's just a matter of looking at the proof of things. And I'm living better now than I ever did. I ever have. My wife and I are on Social Security, but they're looking to cut that because they've got you people believing that Social Security is part of the budget and has to be cut. And it's not. It has its own funding source called FICA taxes. And besides, I'm not even going to get into modern monetary theory. Read Web of Debt by Ellen Hodges Brown. Read Michael Hudson. Read Stephanie Kelton. And you'll realize that we've been lied to about the federal deficit. I'm going to cut off. I'm already at 24 minutes. Got to go. And I'll talk to you later.